What if I told you that objections are for amateurs? Now, before you snap to judgment, I'd like to share with you a quick story that illustrates my point, and then you can be the judge of whether or not the 3 steps to overcoming objections can and will work for you. So it was about 12 years ago. I'm conducting a sales training for 20 salespeople who sell B2B. They're all sitting in this room. They all sell to the same type of clients. They all sell for the same company. And I gave them an exercise to do. And I'd like for you to follow along and do it as well. The first thing I said was grab a pen and paper and write down the 3 top objections that you get, that you hear when you're out visiting with a client, a prospective client of yours. And rank them in order. Like, what's the objection you get the most, the second most, and then the third? And write those down. And don't share it with other people around you. And they did it. And then I asked them a tough question. I said, how many of you, by a show of hands, believe that everyone in this room, all 20 of you, have the same 3 and the same hierarchy and order on your paper? And a couple of hands went up because they insisted, well, we all sell the same service to the same company. This was an electronics manufacturing company in southern Minnesota. And they said, we all sell the same thing to the same type of clients. Why wouldn't we all get the same objections? And then I said, how many of you, what we found out was only 2 out of the 20 had the same 3 in the exact same order. And then I said, how many of you believe all 20 of you have the same 3, just maybe in a different order? And a few more hands went up. And in fact, less than half the room had the same 3 objections on their paper. The other half had another objection that other people weren't getting, and so on. Why is that? Well, understanding the psychology behind that can really help you in overcoming objections in the future. And that's what I want to get into today. Okay, so first of all, you have to understand why you're getting objections in the first place. Oftentimes it's because you're not presenting enough value when you're opening and when you're presenting your services. Number 2, you are trying to close too soon. You're trying to progress the sale sooner or quicker than the other person's decision-making process mentally allows them to, or what they're used to, and also maybe your timing is off. And that's something we're going to get into as well. But to start with, I want you to take on these 3 steps that I'm going to give you, but I want to ask you a question. And this is a question I asked those people sitting in that sales room 12 years ago, which was, if you know what your objections are ahead of time, why have them in the first place? Think about that. If you know what your objections are going to be, if you can anticipate what someone might say, why would you wait to have those objections or wait to hear things like you're too expensive, or we don't have the resources right now to deploy something like this or to take on this project? Or I have to talk it over with our team and with our marketing director or with our partner. Why would you wait until you hear objections like that until the end, right? Or even I want to think it over, right? Which is just a stall. Why would you want to wait to the end? Okay. And so most amateurs will wait to the end and then have rebuttals and comebacks and all this when they're doing objections. So what I want to invite you to do is to take these 3 steps. So number 1, write down the top 3 or more objections that you typically get. That's step 1. So that way you kind of flush it out. Think about the ones that you normally hear or get. Step 2 is to write out how you would inoculate each one of those objections. What do I mean by inoculate? How would you prevent them from ever coming up? There's a couple of techniques for this. I can't get into all of them. I dive into this richly in my courses, and you can hear some of this being framed in marketingagencytraining.com or in my Funnel Sales Academy, which is funnelsalesmasterclass.com. That's a free training that you'll get the mindset from some of that. But first of all, if you think about it like this, there's a couple ways to do it. You can reframe people by using what their excuse is or what their objection is as the reason to do business. So for instance, if somebody says to me, and I normally get, Joe, we don't have the resources or the time to put into this type of project because we already got our hands full. We got a lot on our plate. Well, then I'm going to use that as the reason for them to do business with me. And I'm going to bake it into my conversation, my sales conversation and presentation with the client. So for instance, I might say something like, we're very aware that you're busy. Your marketing team has their plate full. We know that, they're probably a little overwhelmed with all the things that they have to do in order to keep doing what they're doing well already. So what we do is we bridge the gap between or for businesses that don't have the time or the resources or the know-how to get a measurable return on digital marketing. And that's where we come in. We take that pressure off. We're like having an extension to your marketing team, and we just do it for you. So that would be how I might overcome that before it ever gets brought up. Now, another technique is to simply call out the objection. So, you don't want to wait around for someone to say it's you're too expensive or this is a high fee. So you want to frame it and say, listen, we know when we get to the point where we talk about our fees, that's just a matter of being able to evaluate what your return is on your investment. Because some people think of marketing as an expense. We like to think of ourselves as a revenue generator that can keep feeding the engine and sales. And so how we do that is I want you to consider what the ramp up time could turn into. In other words, within a month or two, our goal is that the momentum that we can create for your business turns into enough of a return to where you want to keep paying for our marketing services forever, no matter what the fees would be. And that's our goal. So we'll make sure that we come back with options that you can evaluate based on knowing what's fair for the organization and what's fair for us. Does that sound good? And they'll say yes. Or I'll say, I'm a little concerned on the onset with, or I'll say something like, I'm really concerned with how committed you might be to investing in marketing, even when you meet someone who deep down can help. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how committed are you guys into investing into success if you believe it can genuinely help you? And then I'll get their kind of investment commitment up front from them. Or I might say, I'm a little concerned with the ability of an organization of your size has to afford us. And what I mean by that is, there's a fee for what we're going to be discussing today and what I'm going to be presenting. But I also know that if we can fairly frame that in a way that you see this turning into a return inside of 60 to 90 days for your business, once we get this kind of ramped up and dialed in, this is something that we know a year or two from now, we're still going to have a relationship with. So we want to make sure that you can evaluate it fairly based on that, and that you guys have a budget set aside to get that ramp up period going. And almost everyone says, yes, we do, and that would make sense for us. You see, your clients are never evaluating the fee. Value trumps fee. So they're evaluating whether or not what you're doing is going to be valuable enough for them to invest whatever they're going to put into it, which it doesn't even matter. Because ultimately, if you're doing your job providing consulting or marketing services, you are a revenue generator, and what you do will turn into profit for them over and above what you would ever cost for them to deploy. Really important that you learn how to bake the thoughts you want your customers to think into the conversation. Okay? So here's an example of that. I might say, every once in a while we run into a business or an entrepreneur who just wants to focus in, hone in on the lowest price. But what we learn is that they'll always pay a little bit more for the right solution that they can safely envision will get them the ROI that they're looking for. In other words, investing in the right agency partner. And they always will come and say, you know what, you're right. So that's another way of framing that, hey, you'd probably be willing to pay a little more if you felt comfortable that we were the right partner. So you can say that up front and just make it part of the conversation. And what I would encourage you to do is write these down. Write down these inoculations in a way that sounds right for how you would say it, how you would just conversate it, and start being purposeful in your presentation to prevent objections from ever occurring. Okay, here's step 3. Step 3 is to re-examine your own beliefs around how you buy and what you're offering. What do I mean by that? So even if if you slightly believe that your fees are too high, guess what? Your customer will also probably believe that. You see, we tend to bring objections with us to the meeting. I'll say that again. We tend to bring objections with us to the meeting. What do we mean? We bring our own psychological warfare. We bring our own mindset issues with us into the sales process. If you don't believe you are a revenue generator, how are you ever going to get them to believe it? It has to permeate in your language. It has to show itself and your presentation. It has to come through your pores when you're discussing, because you believe with every fiber of your being that you are a revenue generator, which I know that we are for our clients. So if you're someone who tends to shop around, for example, before making a decision, guess what your clients probably want to do? They want to shop around, talk to other agencies, talk to other people. Maybe you're someone who, before you make major decisions, you like to talk to other people first to get their feedback. Guess what type of objections you probably tend to get the most of? People who want to talk to other people, or talk about it with their marketing director, or ask some references. You see, I'm one of those people who does not need to ask for references ever to make a good decision. And therefore, when I sell, I rarely ever get asked from someone to say, do you have references that we can talk to? It just doesn't happen. I don't believe that they should be asking that. I don't believe that I need that to make a decision, nor do I believe they should. And it just doesn't come out, and it doesn't get brought up. This is why some people get objections and other people don't get the same ones. This is the answer to what I was sharing with you at the beginning of the video. So here's another example. If you're someone who tends to have to think something over, like let's say before you make a major purchase, you're like the type of person who likes to think things over. Guess what type of client you'll tend to get in front of you? Guess what you'll tend to attract and manifest? That exact same psychology. So I would encourage you to examine your own beliefs. In my trainings, I teach something that's in depth around this, and we dive into it. So I'd encourage you to visit my site, joesoto.net, tap into some of my free trainings, and if one of my courses makes sense for you, I dive into a lot of psychology around sales. But at the end of the day, this should be enough to get you going. 3 steps to handling your objections, overcoming them, and it's an ongoing process, so I'll create some ongoing videos on this, and I'd love to hear your questions below, and maybe your questions will also spark my next video topic. So don't be shy, and I'd often reply to every comment that comes in. So thanks for listening and watching, and I'm excited to bring you guys some continued trading like this.